They say that beauty is power, but real power, feminine power, comes from something deeper. It comes when a woman stops chasing approval and begins chasing her soul, when she no longer contorts to fit expectations, but aligns with her inner truth. That's when she becomes magnetic, not because she works for attention, but because she no longer needs it. Emotional maturity is not about being perfect, it's about being whole. And nothing is more irresistible than a woman who has met every part of herself, the light and the shadow, and still chooses herself. This is not a guide to tricks, nor a manual for manipulation. This is an invitation to initiation, to the 7 inner alchemies that transform a woman from chasing desireto, embodying irresistible wholeness. She stopped performing to avoid being abandoned. In her youth, she discovered fast that love rewarded performing. She learned to mirror joy, to soften truth, to smile before the pain spilled. It brought her acceptance, moments of connection, fleeting approval, but never belonging. Her compliance became habit. Her boundaries grew thin. Her needs became whispers. But now, she knows, fear can no longer direct her behavior. She no longer sizes herself to fit comfort. Her voice isn't quieted to protect nerves. Her energy is not rationed to meet quotas. She stands in the fullness of her expression. And if that steals someone's need to control, it is not on her. This is emotional maturity in action, choosing authenticity over appeasement. And in that choice, she becomes irresistible. She stopped imagining him differently. She perceived his truth. Love used to be projection. She believed she could fill holes she didn't create, assumed he would grow, change, heal, if only she loved deeply enough. She wanted to be the hero, wanted to rescue emotions that never belonged to her. Now, she sees clearly, safety is not a schedule of wounds she's willing to tend. Rescue is not a relationship. She recognizes that people show who they are, not who they could be, and she honors that. She no longer collapses around unmet potential. She steps away from the rehearsal of improvements because she realizes she wants the man who sees her as present, not planned. Who resonates with her now, not hopes for who she will be, and when she shows up fully, he either meets her or he fades. That polarity. It's electrifying. It cannot be cheapened by confusion or masochism. She stopped editing her heart for public consumption. She used to sculpt her words, carefully layered with vulnerability, but never too much. She guarded her story, just enough to be safe, just enough to be liked. But emotional maturity has taught her. Your depths are not a performance. Your pain is not a spectacle. Your healing is not an act. So she no longer softens her edges. She says what she feels. She mourns what hurts. She honors what thrives. And when she feels safe, she opens, not for display, but for resonance. That sincerity is magnetic, because whether he stays or goes, he has been seen. And she has been healed in the act of showing up. But let's pause for just a second. Let me tell you something that might shock you. This next sacred message might hit deeper than you expect. Percent of people have no idea that there's a simple, yet deeply sacred, way to help other women who are still lost in the maze of their own soul. Women carrying old wounds, women who silence their screams just to survive, women searching for a truth they don't yet have words for. When you leave a comment, hit like or subscribe to this channel, you're not just supporting a video, you're lighting a torch in the dark. Because algorithms don't understand pain, but they do amplify what many hearts touch. And sometimes that's all it takes, one touch, one spark, to reach another woman who's about to give up, another seeker of truth, another soul starving for reflection, for shelter, for meaning. So be that, be a light on someone else's path, be part of this silent current of healing among women. Comment, subscribe, stay. Your presence here isn't just welcome, it's needed. She stopped collapsing to fit connection. Once, she believed love was union. When she found resonance, she merged. She dimmed sections of herself to create harmony, harmonized until her soul sang in minor keys. Now, she knows that healthy intimacy is not about absence of space. It's about resonance within space. She loves alongside autonomy. She leans without losing roots. She holds without surrendering her center. Her love is not chlorine in a pool. It contains its own depth. It doesn't require dissolving. It demands partnership. And in that, even as she stands alone, she is never truly alone. That is emotional maturity, and that is irresistible. She stopped confusing his distraction with depth. He looked quiet. He distanced at times. He chased introspection while withdrawing. She mistook it for wisdom. Now, she discerns not by presence of silence, but by quality of connection. It's not enough to appear profound. It must feel profound. She trusts her nervous system more than his performance. She listens to her body when she's with him, spine aligned or wrung, presence there or absent. That honesty with herself makes her undeniable, because she doesn't just want to feel deep. She wants to actually be deeply known. She stopped looking for permission to love herself. She spent lifetimes seeking permission from people, from cultures, from her own story. Now she knows that she is her own validation. No mirror needed, no trophy required. She speaks to herself with reverence. She holds her mind with tenderness. She honors her body with daily devotion. That is emotional maturity. She didn't wait for someone to tell her she was worth it. She told herself. And now she walks in the light of her own blessing. She stopped chasing reflection and became resonance. She used to think attraction meant being seen, a glowing mirror of another's gaze. But that's surface. Now she understands. You don't attract admiration. You attract resonance. Resonance that happens when her authenticity clarifies the air around her, when her calmly rooted presence touches others' soul. A still rose in a stormy garden. It doesn't fight the wind. It doesn't bloom for applause. It simply unfolds, and everyone inhales, because emotional maturity doesn't demand permission. It radiates devotion to presence itself. That is what makes her irresistible. She once thought that love was about meeting halfway. Now she knows it's about meeting her all the way. And when she meets herself fully, with fierce compassion, deep boundaries, wide open heart, the world around her rearranges itself, because emotional maturity is contagious. It doesn't ask for energy, it radiates it. These are the next 7 reflections of her magnetic presence. She no longer asks for emotional labor, she sets emotional currency. She used to police the tone of their conversations, asking him to be vulnerable, share his heart. She carried the weight of connection on her shoulders. Now, she simply shows up, not to fix, but to feel. Her presence becomes the currency. Either people meet her sincerity with equal investment, or they leave with clarity. And that uncompromised energy, it's like a moth-to-flame magnetism. People feel it. She trusts emotional alignment over emotional attachment. Once she dated the idea of love, someone she hoped into being. Now she dates resonance, the energy she feels when her body relaxes in his presence. Emotional maturity recognizes that attachment without alignment is just suffering in disguise. And surrendering to resonance, that's pure magnetism. She speaks need in present tense, not longing. She used to say, I wish, I hope, I want you to. Now, I need this. Need isn't unlovely, it's human. She learned that it doesn't push people away. It clarifies who belongs. A woman who names her needs in sovereignty is like a lighthouse in fog, irresistible clarity. She chooses energy that matches hers. She no longer tolerates lower frequency. If someone drains, she drains them, not emotionally but energetically. No availability for toxicity, but she doesn't seek partners to uplift her. She uplifts herself. People who can ride her frequency stay, others drift away. That alignment-brewed company becomes her magnet. She remains soft while being immovable. Once, softness meant surrender. Now, it means sovereignty. She becomes the paradox, gentle enough to feel deeply, strong enough to stand in truth. That is tremendous presence. Like a willow in a storm, it moves with grace without breaking. Her intuition stands as a silent guard. She no longer trusts words alone, but the feeling in her body. She pauses when her spine tightens, when her chest clenches, when her breath shortens in someone's presence. Her emotional maturity is in those pauses. They are not exit signs. They are clarities. They speak louder than her fears. She listens and she knows. That is magnetic intelligence. She teaches by being, not instructing. She no longer lectures vulnerability or preaches over text. She lives it. Her boundaries aren't arguments. They are invitations. Her care isn't generative. It's sacred. Everyone around her gets the unspoken lesson. Emotional maturity works, not by force, but by resonance. Through these ripples, her relational world transforms. She's no longer searching. She's irresistible. Her love doesn't need explanation. It needs presence. And now, she doesn't attract men who need her. She attracts men who match her. Because emotional maturity isn't sexy, it's irresistible. Some women grow up, others awaken. She awakened not into perfection, but into truth. And truth, when fully embodied by a woman who knows herself, is impossible to ignore. Her presence becomes a gravitational field, not because she's loud, but because she's real. Here are the final 7 magnetic revelations of the emotionally mature woman. Her absence becomes more powerful than her presence ever was. She used to measure love by proximity. Who showed up? Who stayed? Now, her absence speaks just as loudly. When she steps away, things shift. The energy clears. The illusions crack, not out of punishment, but purification. Her silence is no longer passive. It's priestess-level discernment. She doesn't need to explain why she left. Her absence is the clarity. And in that absence, she becomes unforgettable. 2. She doesn't attract, she activates. She's not trying to seduce anyone. She's too busy living in alignment. And because of that, people either rise around her or retreat. She walks into a room and doesn't demand attention. She stirs something. Some love her, some fear her, but no one can ignore her because her maturity doesn't perform. It mirrors. And what people see in her is what they've avoided in themselves. That's not charm, that's frequency. She doesn't chase purpose, she embodies it. She no longer asks, "What should I do?" She asks, "What is asking to be lived through me?" She doesn't look for missions to fix the world. She becomes the space where presence heals naturally. That's the thing. Her life is not a performance anymore. It's a devotion. That calm depth is magnetic. People don't know why they feel safe in her field. They just do. Her softness becomes weaponless power. She used to armor up, smile with precision, soften with strategy. Now softness is no longer a mask, it's an offering. She speaks gently because she has nothing to prove. She laughs slowly because she trusts the moment. She holds boundaries kindly because her value is already known. Nothing about her is performative. Everything about her is power, and power like that is irresistible. She no longer fears solitude. She cultivates it. Once, she feared being alone. Now, she crafts her solitude like a sacred garden. She lets silence hold her, lets her body speak without needing to explain. lets her soul guide her mornings before the world arrives. And because she no longer clings to connection, connection clings to her, not because she's lonely, but because she's luminous. Her aloneness is filled with presence. Her solitude, a temple, and in a world addicted to noise, that kind of stillness is magnetic. She becomes the invitation others didn't know they were seeking. She doesn't ask people to change, she is the shift. Just by being, she reflects a different possibility, that healing can be quiet, that power can be gentle, that beauty can come from self-knowing, not self-erasing. In her presence, people confront their masks. She's not trying to be loved, she's loving. She's not trying to be followed, she's leading, without moving. And those who are ready find themselves drawn to her because she reminds them who they are. She lives as a quiet revolution. There's no need for declarations, no manifestos, no validation. She is the revolution, a woman who chose herself, who remembered her worth, who walked away from what didn't meet her and didn't apologize for it. She doesn't just hold boundaries, she holds a frequency. She doesn't just inspire people, she transforms rooms, and she's not doing anything different. She's just not doing what drains her anymore. That's emotional maturity, and that's why she's irresistible. She isn't magnetic because she's trying to be. She's magnetic because she finally stopped trying to be anything at all. She simply became the woman whose presence feels like truth, whose silence feels like peace, whose life feels like freedom. And in a world of noise, that is what people crave, even if they don't know why. Even if they can't name it, they feel her. And they stay, not because she needs them to, but because they want to rise where she already stands. She didn't become irresistible by changing herself. She became irresistible by returning to herself. And in that return, everything that was once forced now flows. She no longer convinces. She no longer explains. She no longer rushes to prove her softness, her worth, her love. She just is, because emotional maturity isn't a mask. It's the shedding of every mask she once wore to be chosen. Now she chooses herself. And in that choosing, the world aligns, not in chaos but in cadence, not in drama but in depth. There's a stillness in her now, a quiet so deep you can feel it before she enters the room. She doesn't walk to be seen, she walks with the unseen. She doesn't speak to fill silence. She lets silence do the speaking. She isn't magnetic because she wants you to follow. She's magnetic because she no longer follows what doesn't feel like home. She's not a siren. She's not a seductress. She's not a fantasy. She's real. And that, in a world of performance, is irresistible, because the woman who is deeply at peace becomes louder than the woman who begs to be heard. The woman who sits with her pain radiates more light than the one who covers it with smiles. The woman who's no longer afraid to be alone is the one everyone wants to be with. She doesn't need to make noise. She is the echo. She doesn't need to convince anyone to stay. Her field filters for her. She doesn't need to be chosen anymore. She chooses from her soul, and maybe that's what men feel when they meet her now. Not her availability, but her absence of need. Not her pursuit, but her permission. Not her fire for them, but her flame for herself. She's not waiting. She's not explaining. She's not hoping. She's remembering. And in that remembering, she becomes not just irresistible, she becomes unforgettable. So let the world feel her. Let the silence carry her name. Let her presence walk ahead of her. Because the most powerful thing about her isn't her beauty. It isn't her voice. It isn't even her mind. It's that she is finally, undeniably herself. If you felt something rise while listening, a lump in your throat, a quiet memory, a breath you didn't know you were holding, then this was never just a video. It was a mirror, a remembering. And maybe you didn't come here by accident. Maybe Something in you has been preparing for this moment, to hear words you didn't know you needed, to feel seen without being asked to perform, to know you are not the only one walking this path back to your center, your sovereignty, your quiet knowing. If this spoke to you, let yourself speak back. Tell us in the comments what part of this echoed something you've lived. Tell us the truth you no longer try to explain. Tell us where you stopped chasing and started becoming, because every time a woman speaks from her healing, another woman reading in silence begins to believe in hers. This space is not about algorithms. It is about resonance. It is about remembrance. So if this met you where you are, let it be known. Let this moment be marked, like this video if your body softened while watching, if your silence felt less alone, if your heart said, yes, this is me now, and if you're returning to yourself more and more each day, if your boundaries are getting clearer, your voice steadier, your presence deeper, then subscribe, not for content, but for company, for sacred reflection, for soul companionship. We're not here to perform our healing, we're here to live it. And if you've made it all the way to these words, then maybe you weren't just watching a video, maybe you were crossing a threshold. And if that's true, then remember, you are not alone. You were never too much, and you have nothing left to prove. Now take this feeling with you, not to explain it, but to become it. We'll be here every time you need to remember who you really are.